Glad you're here this evening. It was kind of odd not preaching this morning, and since I wasn't preaching, as you heard, they sent me off to be in Bible hour. I had never been to Bible hour even one time in my life, not even as a child. So if your children are scarred from this morning, I'm sorry, but I think it all worked out okay. So glad that you're here with us tonight, and glad you're here to worship with us tonight. And I see Denise Doherty with us tonight, and our prayers are with Denise as her husband Ricky was just here just a few weeks ago and is struggling with his health, and our prayers are certainly with her. And there are so many people in this congregation that are struggling in various ways. It's just the way it is in life, but it's also very difficult for all of us. Tonight, we are talking about faith beyond circumstances. I won't be here next week, but the week that we come back, we're going to come back to this subject again. But it's faith beyond circumstances, and we're looking at the life of Job tonight. And you might remember with Job that Job had all kinds of issues, as others have all kinds of issues. So, have you ever had friends that just made your situation worse? Friends that tried to help you out, but they said the exact wrong thing, or they did the wrong thing. They meant to try. Maybe more than likely they were trying. Maybe they weren't even trying. I don't know. I remember years ago, back before we were married, I had this little Plymouth Horizon. That's a little hatchback car. The back window's kind of like this. It was what we might call a disposable car. They would go like 50,000 miles, and then you just threw them away. And I had this job. I worked for Oklahoma Christian University. I was going to graduate school, and I had this job where I would go, it's all before the internet, I would go and show slides about OC in a different congregation every service, Sunday morning, Sunday night, Wednesday night. I was literally on the road, went to nearly every congregation in the state of Oklahoma, as well as some in Texas and in Kansas as well. But this slide projector was huge. It was a huge box. And so it was in the back of my car, and it was in there in a strange way because it just fit just right. And a friend of mine asked if he could borrow my car to run an errand. And I said, sure. Whenever he came back, he said, well, I have some bad news for you. I said, what's that? He said, well, that box in the back of your car wasn't in there. It was in there kind of crooked and didn't look good. So I moved it so it looked good, and then I lowered the hatch, and, well, you have a broken window now. Thanks a lot, right? You know what I'm talking about, right? When someone means to do something good and they do something that just is a mess. We've all probably not only been the victim, but we have been the ones who have done that same thing. Job had 3 friends that came to him in the midst of his afflictions to come and try to help him out in some way. And we're going to talk more about his afflictions on another day. But you know that Job had lost almost everything. You may remember, and like I say, we'll talk about this later in Job chapter 1 and the beginning of chapter 2. You read of some of the things, or most of the things he lost. I mean, first of all, he lost his livestock, and then all of his workers, they all die. And then he loses beyond that. He has sores, boils on his body. His children die, all of them at once. They're at a party, and they die. I mean, it's terrible what's happening to Job. In the midst of all this, well, these 3 friends come over, and his friends want to console him and find answers. Most of the book of Job are the speeches made by his friends. They go on and on and on, which makes me think sometimes fewer words might be better than many words. But they produce many words for Job. As Job is there and listens as they try to come up with what it may be, and boy, it is not helping in any sense of the word. So in Job chapter 19 and verses 1 through 6, this is how Job answers his friend. How long will you torment me and crush me with words? You have humiliated me 10 times now, and you mistreat me without shame. Even if it's true that I have sinned, my mistake concerns only me. And if you really want to appear superior to me and would use my disgrace as evidence against me, then understand that it is God who has wronged me and caught me in his net. Now, I want you to remember, and like I say, in 2 weeks, we're going to talk more about this issue that goes on with Job. But remember what had happened to Job. Satan and God are talking, which is kind of a weird scene as is. And God says, I've got this man who's really incredible. And Satan basically says the only reason he follows you is to get stuff from you. And God says, no, that's not true. Job will stay faithful to me even if he loses everything. You can do anything, but you can't kill him. And so Satan says, okay. And so Satan is the one who's actually doing all those terrible things that happen to Job. It all comes from Satan. How he loses his children, how he gets poor health, how he loses his livestock, he loses the people who work for him. That all came from Satan, and God is watching on as all that happens. And so Job basically says, you are killing me with your words. All these things you say, you have humiliated me 10 times. I don't know if you've ever said that to one of your friends, but you might have wanted to say that to them, right? You are on my last nerve. Get out, right? But I also want you to see that Job is a little bit confused as to what is happening, just like we can be confused by what is happening. He says, understand that it is God who has wronged me and caught me in his net. Well, what we know when we know the whole story here is it is not God who has wronged Job, and God has not caught him in his net. Now, God is there. He is permitting some things to happen, but it is Satan who is doing these things to Job. It is evil that is happening. It is not God. But I want us to think mostly tonight about his friends. Our concern sometimes can come across as arrogance. This is more about the way we talk to people when they're hurting. Have you ever known of someone, whenever they find out we have a problem, and maybe we have never talked to that person at all, or maybe we think that they're more important than we are, or whatever, and then all at once when we have a problem, then there they are. Oh, tell me how you're feeling, honey. You know what I'm talking about, right? Bless your heart. You know that line too, right? And all at once they're so interested in us when they've never been interested before, that our concern sometimes can come across as arrogant, and sometimes it is. Sometimes, and I don't mean, now no one in this crowd, I'm talking about the people who don't come on Sunday night or watch on Sunday night, okay? So it's none of you. But sometimes people want to get the facts so that they can gossip. Because they want to say, well, I heard. And it's not really about consoling. It's not about helping. It's not about being there to be a shoulder that you can cry on. But it's more about, I want to hear the good stuff. Sometimes it can be about arrogance when a person comes and talks to us. It's about that they just want to be superior and say, well, I don't know if you know this, but I have been through the exact same thing. Now, I want to chase a rabbit, as I say in my classes on Wednesday night, for just a moment. You may use that phrase, and that is okay, but I don't ever use that phrase, and if I do, I repent. Because there are no two situations that are exactly the same. For example, I lost my dad as a kid. You might have lost your dad at the same exact age by the same exact illness, but it was not the same. My mother died whenever I was an adult, and it could have been the same exact age in the same exact town in the same exact way, but it was not exactly the same. I can't say, oh, I know exactly how you feel. I don't know. I can imagine some things, and there can be some things similar, but they are different at the same time. My grief can be similar to your grief, but it's not exactly the same. So try to use different words, like I can imagine maybe how some of this is, although I don't know exactly what you're going through. But they're old Job's friends. They've got it. Matter of fact, they have more than 20 chapters worth to say. And in Job chapter 19, verses 7 through 14, Job says, I cry out violence, but I get no response. I call for help, but there is no justice. He, being God, has blocked my way so that I cannot pass through. He has veiled my paths with darkness. He has stripped me of my honor and removed the crown from my head. He tears me down on every side so that I am ruined. He uproots my hope like a tree. His anger burns against me, and he regards me as one of his enemies. His troops advance together. They construct a ramp against me, and they camp around my tent. He has removed my brothers from me. My acquaintances have even abandoned me. My relatives stopped coming by, and my close friends have forgotten me. Wow. Job is in a lot of pain. He's in a lot of pain, like a lot of folks we know, and maybe even you are in right now. He's in pain. And I'm not saying tonight that God is having some kind of test with whatever you have experienced or experiencing with Satan. I'm not trying to say that at all. We live in a fallen world where there are things that just happen. People pass away. We know that all of us, if we live long enough, that will happen for all of us. We get that. We understand that people have accidents and terrible things happen in this world, and we can't control other people. We get all of that. But boy, Job is upset. Violence, I cry out. And no one answers, and God doesn't answer. I want you to know tonight, as we are in all of our issues, you realize there are about 50 people who come here on Sunday who are crying out violence to God. And they haven't heard the answer they want of peace. We have both Russians and Ukrainians who come here. That the same thing that they feel and the pain that they feel as they cry out to God, as we cry out for the things that we deal with, whether it be an economic issue that we have, or if it be a loved one that's sick, or even ourselves, maybe we're sick or we're dealing with problems, that we all deal with these things. And Job knows exactly what that's like, and he says, I am torn down. I feel like I am ruined. You see, Job feels like God has forgotten him. You may feel like God has forgotten you. You may say, I pray all night long and I don't hear anything. It's not a still voice I'm trying to find. I'm just trying to find direction and I still got nothing. You may feel that, and Job feels like God has forgotten him. But God definitely remembered Job. God had never forgotten Job. You see, God was always involved in this. God always knew what was going on all the time. Why did God allow this to happen? I wish in my little finite brain, I would have done it differently. But I'm not God, right? God did it the way it was supposed to be done. You see, Job had unknowingly been called for a special mission. Do you realize that? God and Satan had a conversation. And God says, this man Job is so upright. He is such a good man that he will not leave me. And Satan says, oh, yes, he will. He is just there for the blessings. Have you ever wondered what it would be like in a church if we were to say, hey, I want you to know from now on there will be no blessings? If we were to say, even in a church, anything like this, we're not going to have the same ministries that we've had in the past. We're going to quit having children's ministry from now on. Boy, people would be upset by that, wouldn't they? And you know what? We're going to quit having Young at Heart lunch once a month. And you would say, what? We've got to have that. If we started saying these blessings, these things that we get, all at once are gone, and say, you're going to pray to God, but God is not going to bless you. Some of us, would just say, then why in the world am I even a Christian if God is not going to bless me? Isn't that what it's all about? And you can go to churches all over the place, and even right here in Houston, famous for it, saying that God is going to give you a blessing today. If you just pray for it, he is going to give you exactly what you ask for. But what if he doesn't? Because he doesn't always decide that that's what we need. Maybe it's not about us. Maybe it's about the whole scheme, about what's going on in life. Whatever he doesn't. But Job is called for this special mission. So Job can't know the plan or the results would be disputable. So what do you mean by that? If Job knows that this is going on, then it would be easier for Job to say, okay, well, I can hold on for just a little bit longer because I know this is between God and Satan, and I can do that. And so he can't know, because if he knows, the devil would have said, well, he already knew the end, right? I hear people say that about Jesus. Maybe even some of you have said it before. Well, Jesus knew how it was going to turn out, so it wasn't really that hard, was it? Well, I think it was still really, really hard, okay? But I want you to also understand, Job, he didn't know that. And so he can't know, or it doesn't work. And so Job doesn't know. And because he doesn't know, it is really hard. Matter of fact, in Job chapter 19 and verses 23 and 24, this is what he says whenever he is in so much pain as he cries out to God and he is so frustrated. He says, I wish that my words were written down, that they were recorded on a scroll, or were inscribed in stone forever by an iron stylus and lead. So you're saying, well, what does that mean? First of all, he's saying, God is not responding. I am praying and I am hearing nothing from God. Ever felt that way? I pray and I pray. I wake up at 2 o'clock in the morning when finally I can go to sleep, and I wake up at 2 o'clock in the morning, and there I am, and there is my mind, and I'm saying, Lord, where are you? And I pray until sunlight. And I'm not doing a good job at work because I'm so tired. And I pray and I pray, and it just doesn't seem like things come the way that I want them to. God, it feels like God isn't responding. Matter of fact, he says, I want you to know that so much that I want to chisel this out in granite where it will never be lost. That everyone from now on will know how frustrated I am right now. Well, it's one thing to say the words. It's one thing to write the words. It's something else to engrave it, right? I don't want anyone to ever forget how frustrated I am. Well, I'm going to say this first, and I have something to tell you afterwards. But he ends in Job 19, verses 25 through 27. As frustrated as he is, and as much as he thinks God is not answering, this is what he says. But I know that my Redeemer lives, and at the end he will stand on the dust. Even after my skin has been destroyed, yet I will see God in my flesh. I will see him myself. My eyes will look at him, and not as a stranger. My heart, I left a T out here, didn't I? My heart longs within me. Hear what he says? This is literally right after the verses that we saw just a minute ago about engraving. That was verse 24. And now we come right into 25, and he says, but this I know, that my Redeemer lives. You know that song? Some of you know. We're going to sing it here in a minute. Even though the world is falling apart, even though my nation may be at war, even though I've lost a loved one, even though I might be wasting away, even though I don't have any money in the bank, even though I have creditors everywhere, even though I know that my Redeemer lives. I know it. And at the end, it's all going to be okay. In the end, I'm not going to look at him mad. In the end, he's not going to say, who are you? In the end, we are going to look at each other, and we are not going to be strangers. You know, one reason they're not strangers is because Job is really praying through this, isn't he? He is talking to God a lot. What's amazing is Job never lost hope. Even in the midst of something worse than I can ever imagine going through. Losing your business, your future business, your servants, your health, all of your children. I cannot imagine that. But even through that, Job never lost hope. Instead, he said, I know that my Redeemer lives. You see, faith should not be dependent on circumstances. It's not because of the circumstance that I believe. I should be faithful to God if I live in a mansion, and I should be faithful to God if I live in a refugee camp. I should be faithful to God if everything is going my way, and I should be faithful to God if I have nothing but a horrific future in front of me, that I stay faithful to God. And you know what I know that Job could feel and sense, but I know because I live in the era of the New Testament, I know that my Redeemer does live. And I know that I will see my Redeemer. And I know that a day will come when there will be no more hate and no more problems. There will be no more violence. There will be no more losing loved ones. There will be no more losing our health. There will be none of that, but only what is wonderful and perfect. That is the message of the New Testament, that day is coming. So therefore, I should not lose hope. But that is the question for us tonight. Do I know that he lives? Do I know that? And if you are struggling with that question, I'll be happy to talk to you, and other people in here will be too. But if you know it, that he lives, why wouldn't you live for him? And I pray that you do. Tonight, if you need to be baptized into Christ, or if you need prayers and you just need to ask us to help you, or ask God to help you, you can come forward, or you can write to us at prayer@mcoc.org.